and welcome to a new episode of the Financial Fox TV show. First of all, I'd like to thank you all our amazing followers as we have finally hit the 4K subscribers mark on our YouTube channel, which is amazing. I mean, when I have started a few years ago, it was only a handful of followers. And now I have all of you beautiful people, which is great. And I want to thank you, all of you, for your support. We have been working really hard, and I will keep doing my best to keep you entertained while sharing informative and innovative topics, content, and also bring you the coolest interviewees. By the way, if you have any ideas or you have any suggestions, please get in touch with us on Twitter at Financial Fox or at Cassiopeia Ltd, or actually you can get in touch directly with me at Stefixi. So, the lucky man I'm going to interview today is, guess who? Jared Tate. So let me give you a little bit of background for Jared. Is the founder of Digibyte blockchain, and he's also the author of Blockchain 2035, the digital DNA of Internet 3.0. Jared is a strong believer in the power of decentralization and security, how new technology can disrupt the current status quo, and also empowering people and countries. So today we are going to discuss the rise of cryptocurrencies, their role and their potential versus soft money, so fiat currencies. But also we are going to talk about the response of governments and central banks to the pandemic and the opportunity created by a new tech era where technological advancements are promising to improve our lives. Hi, Jared, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
Well, I can see that. Where are you? I mean, it's a fantastic seaside.
It's absolutely beautiful here. I can't quite tell you where it is. It's an undisclosed location.
Okay, let's leave it like that. But it sounds amazing. That's really good. So, how have you been?
Fantastic. Just trying to do the best that I can in 2020. I think, like everybody else out there, it's been one heck of a year for all of us.
Yeah, it's been pretty crazy. Maybe we can start about hearing your comment, and also what do you think about the current situation in the US? I mean, we have seen what the central bank's policy is going to be. It seems they're going to let inflation going, which, it can be quite damaging long term. So what's the perception there, and what do you think?
I think, well, as the recent remarks from the Fed chairman here this last week, they're basically targeting inflation, which I don't see a way how they could possibly avoid that with all the money that they printed in 2020. I just stumbled across this website called truthinaccounting.org that publishes the national debt of the United States, and the official published numbers are 26 trillion. But there's a team of researchers that have come out with reports saying that it's actually closer to 134 trillion. So this truthinaccounting.org has a lot of information about that. So, with this much money, and this high of a national debt for the United States, really the only possible way that they could ever get away or get rid of it is to inflate it away. But, with as much money as we've seen printed because of the coronavirus pandemic in 2020, you're already starting to see the inflation in real estate in the United States, as well as even food prices. And that's going to continue, I think, into 2021, 2022. So I think the real show is just starting. And that's why you're starting to see a lot of, people that you never have heard talk about cryptos before. Start taking a serious look at cryptocurrency and crypto assets.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I wanted to go a little bit deeper into that because obviously the stock market has been trading on hopes, and we never see, you know, those prices since 1986. I mean, the technology stocks just went through the roof after March, which you know, has been quite amazing to watch. But also there was a lot of activity in the stock market. I mean, we have seen gold reaching the highest and going above 2000. But as you said, lots more people, they are going into crypto. Do you think it's because people are trying to kind of avoid the recession, investing into something that it might be a little bit risky, but you know, it can be something that can have a high upside?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know many people that are looking at crypto as a hedge, as they should, you know, as they should gold and silver as well. You know, all you have to do is there's an index. So in the United States, we have something called the CPI, right? The Consumer Price Index. And that's a measurement of basically, you know, the true cost of like actual living inflation in the United States. Now, the problem is it only measures about 50 items. And some of those items are like a new car and a new TV. Well, how often do people actually go out and buy a new car and a new TV? Well, there were some researchers and economists that put together something called the Chapman Index, which reflects the true cost of living increase in America. And what they do is they take the top 500 items on which Americans spend their after-tax dollars on in the largest 50 cities. So if you go to chapwoonindex.com, you can look city by city, and the recent data I'm seeing, the first half of 2020, in New York and Los Angeles, you were about 13% actual cost of living increases. So that's the true inflation for your everyday goods that you're looking at right now. So, you know, absolutely, crypto is a hedge against that, especially cryptos that have a finite hard cap. You know, a lot of people don't realize that a lot of crypto projects out there actually don't have a limit, so they can actually continually be created and minted. There's actually just a handful of crypto assets out there that actually do have a hard cap. So that's another thing people should be aware of. But yes, absolutely. You know, with this much of an increase, you know, 13% increase in the price of everyday goods. You know, I mean, the example I give people is if you had $100 US last year, you effectively only have $90 in purchasing power since January.
Exactly. So cash is not king anymore.
Not now, not especially you know, if we're heading into an inflationary wave like you know, the Federal Reserve Chairman says we are. So I mean, they're targeting inflation for, you know, quite some time. But like I said, that's the only way that they could plausibly even potentially get rid of all the debt that's out there.
So do you see the price of crypto keep going up?
Well, it's going to do like it always has. It's very volatile. I mean, it's smoothing out. You know, I mean, it's definitely, it's not the volatility we were seeing in, you know, 2013, 2012, or even the 2017. Which I don't know if we will ever see the volatility like we had in 2017. I think you'll see it in certain small cap assets. You know, but in terms of some of the larger cryptos, it seems everything kind of moves in conjunction. You know, you look at the top 20 or 30 and they're kind of moving together. You know, one day they're all up 5 to 10%. The next day they're all down 5%. So, you know, there's still volatility. You know, there's still the potential for some massive, you know, short-term downside or upside. You know, I kind of gave up. I've never given public predictions on exactly specific times of where it's going to go. So I'm not that great at it. But yeah, long term, I mean, there's no choice for it to go, you know, but to the upside. You know, barring some sort of out of this world event, you know, EMP strikes, solar flares, you know, that stuff outside of our control. As long as the internet stays on, it's promising.
Exactly, that's the most important things. Well, listen, we are also seeing such crazy things happening in the financial market, and the boom of DeFi, which is something that I want to talk about, is supposed to be one of the biggest events in the crypto space. Now, do you think we are going to see something similar to the ICO boom that we saw in 2017?
Yes and no. I think the market's a little wiser. Although, in crypto, we've kind of had these fads, right? Going back to like 2013, 2014, 15, 16, 17, there's these new terminology, when it emerges, it becomes the trend of the week, or not even the week, of the month, I guess. And out of that usually comes, some good new ideas, some new technology that's useful. But then there's about 90% of it that I would frankly say ends up being crap, right? And people end up losing money because it ends up becoming a speculator's paradise there. But then obviously some people get burned. So I think just like the previous waves, whether it was the colored coins wave or the country coins wave or the ICO boom or the country coin boom, or the airdrop phase, there's been these eras in the history of crypto since 2009 where new ideas and trends emerge. And a lot of times these are just rehashed ideas that are rebranded and remarketed, and there's a new wave. It's good and bad because, like I said, some new investors come in, they do get hurt, they do get burned. But at the same time, it does generate excitement, it does generate attention, and there are new ideas that come out of it. So, when I hear the term DeFi, I think, the underlying premise of DeFi has been around since the inception of Bitcoin, in my opinion. So I don't really...
Do you want maybe to expand a little bit on that,
the idea is simple: decentralized finance, right? Being able to basically take out all the middle parties and all the middlemen that are involved in any sort of financial ecosystem. To me, that's been the spirit since day one. However, the actual execution and implementation of the crypto industry, from 2010 basically up until 2020, for the most part, you've ended up relying on these highly centralized third parties, whether they be exchanges, whether they be payment gateways, or somebody acting as some sort of intermediary, which to me has always kind of defeated the purpose of crypto. But now we're actually starting to see some systems and projects that are actually truly decentralized, and that's where this DeFi, I guess, term kind of is originating from, right? Where you can actually have some smart contracts locked up that of course, I think part of the terminology people are choosing when they say yield farming and this other jargon that's being thrown around, partially is probably because it's been, I'm sure some lawyer said somewhere that if you use this term, it's not quite investment advice, etc. Blah 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 blah. I think there's some of that going on. But once again, it's bringing excitement, it's bringing attention. There is some good innovation and some new innovation coming out of it, but the underlying core premise has been there since the beginning. That hasn't changed. I haven't seen anything that I've read about that's come out here in the last 3-4 months that I hadn't read about 3 or 4 years ago, hypothetically. It's just the difference is you're actually starting to see some of these projects. Some of the projects that people are calling DeFi, they've been under development for 3 or 4 years. So
we were talking about digital assets 3 years ago.
Oh, I was having conversations 7-8 years ago, right? So it's but it takes time to do this. It's a lot of work. It's these systems are all new. Some of them are highly experimental, so there's a lot of risk involved in it. We as developers, we're not perfect. We make mistakes. That's one of the things that when you have a track record, like Digibyte does, being out there in the wild for 7 years, that there's a lot of issues that we've had to sort out over the years and improve and build upon. And so these systems are going to take time.
Exactly, and you mentioned about problem and risk, and I think security, particularly in a DeFi environment, is going to be even more really a problem, because with a bank account you kind of have some kind of security because it's a centralized system. How do you think security can be really implemented into a DeFi ecosystem?
Well, it's not just a one simple solution kind of scenario. There's thousands of variables involved, and there's multiple layers, there's multiple attack surfaces. So it really depends on the particular application. And it is an issue. Some of the designs that I've seen, and I'm not here to slander or target any specific projects, but I can say that some of the designs I've seen, to me, really stood out with some very, very significant architectural design flaws. Basically some huge, security risks, right? I mean, some of these things are when they're, what DeFi is really doing is it's this movement where you've got all these people that are like, okay, I've got this wealth in cryptocurrency. It's been sitting there for years. It's going up and down just from the asset pricing, but it's really not doing anything for me. So if I can take those crypto assets and I can cryptographically lock them up in a contract or some sort of thing with another network that's going to give me yield or a return, well, I can actually, my money can do something for me instead of just sitting there. You've got all these people that have been holding Bitcoin for a decade, and they're like, well, what if I can put it somewhere and it can generate me 10% or 20% or 30% on top of what it's already generating just being Bitcoin? And that's kind of, it's a cool idea. With Digibyte, we've been talking through several different attempts and ways that we can take Digibytes, lock them up, let people use that underlying value with like what we were talking about with the DigiDollar, stuff like that. So that's really kind of what this DeFi movement is it's taking, crypto assets, cryptocurrency, Ethereum, Bitcoin, Litecoin, Digibyte, locking it up and then putting in some sort of new decentralized financial product. Well, a lot of the ways that they're doing that by locking up, I like to say, and a lot of people like to say, if it's not your private keys, it's not your crypto, right? So a lot of these systems and approaches require you to give up control of your private keys in order to lock up to get returns and yield. Well, when you do that, and there's security flaws, or even worse, some of these projects and systems, they take everybody's funds and just lump them together. To me, that's very dangerous. And I think we're going to see some pretty spectacular failures and hacks, et cetera, just like we have for the last 10 years. So I think, there could be a little bit of a short-term burst as some of these products fail. I mean, we've already seen some of them because this is highly experimental stuff. And once again, when you're giving your private keys over to somebody else or some third-party protocol, which, some of these claim to be decentralized, but they're not, they're handing it over to a single company that controls your keys, et cetera. You really have to do your homework and research. And some of these are very risky and they're highly experimental. So I'm definitely not, betting the farm on any of these new things I'm seeing. And just to give people a heads up, for the last 10 years, you'll see some new project come in, gets everybody's attention, all the hype on social media, everybody's excited. It'll rocket up into the top 20. Something will happen, it'll come out that there's a handful of insiders controlling it. And then, usually just as quick as it came into the top 100, they fall out of the top 100. So, and
lots of people, they get trapped in it. Yeah.
Right. That's the norm. That's the trend. That's the pattern that's happened over the last, 10 years. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. But like I said earlier, sure, there's going to be some exciting new technologies and some good stuff. But the overwhelming majority of this stuff is either, a very elaborate scam or very inefficient code hacked together that's going to have some sort of an exploit or flaw.
Yeah, exactly. So, treat very carefully. Anyway, talking about Digibyte, so you mentioned a few things just before. I also see the work that you are doing with Antum, and that's great in terms of authentication and verification of digital identities. Can you maybe tell us a little bit more of what you are working on?
Well, first of all, I directly have not been working with Antum. That's all been them, and they're doing a fantastic, amazing job. There's a lot of stuff happening because, as you know, anybody can build on top of Digibyte. Anybody can integrate Digibyte, and there are many people doing that. I'm learning stuff every time, I get on social media. So I don't really have like a direct day-to-day with all these different groups because it is decentralized. But we're continuing to evolve just like we have been, over the last 7 years. So, there's more and more people using Digi assets, using Digi ID, more exchange listings, more integrations. The big thing we're kind of focused on now is the core protocol upgrades. I mean, that's, for me, that's kind of the most important part. In a lot of ways, it's the least sexy. But it's also, I think, a lot of ways the least and most misunderstood about a blockchain. I like to tell people Digibyte has basically kind of been reinvented 6 times now, over the last 7 years. And, not trying to knock any specific people out there, but let's just say that a lot of what we've done with Digibyte is continue to innovate, right? Whereas a lot of times you've got some founders out there, instead of taking this existing blockchain and improving it and making it better, they just go launch a new one because they know they're going to make a lot more money. But to me, it's like we need to make Digibyte as best as it can be, which I think it's in a very good spot right now. It's a very robust, very resilient blockchain with a lot of utility. And so
what you're going to focus on the new protocol?
Oh, well, just, different enhancements. So, basically, without getting into overly technical details, there are things to improve. So one of our focuses right now is streamlining the assets integration and the assets, utility, so to make it easier for people, because we do believe in the future moving forward, being able to issue different sorts of, and to me, when I hear the term digital asset, I just don't think financial products. I've said this in the past. It can include something like your medical records. It can include your personal private data, pictures, stuff like that, being able to anchor and authenticate it with you as an individual. Your private keys can encrypt and store and secure much more than just financial assets. So being able to bring that world into, it's possible now, but, the thing about crypto is there's a lot of possibilities, but unless you make it super simple for people to do and use on a daily basis, most people aren't going to do it. So, what we're really trying to do is simplify that interaction between the end user and the ability to use the blockchain for, some important stuff.
Sounds really interesting. So I'm really looking forward to see, when do you think it's gonna be released, the new protocol?
I don't want to give a specific date, and it's not necessarily a new protocol. It's just updates. So, over the last 7 years, we've probably released at least maybe 15 updated versions of the protocol, and that's where you go in and you tweak things. And there's literally, some of these changes, we've changed 100,000 lines of code, right? So, some of them have taken over a year. So this one, we're looking at potentially in the future swapping out a mining algorithm, which, right now I don't necessarily know if it's urgent, but, we have been talking about that as a community. But then, once again, within the protocol, there's a lot of there's thousands of minor tweaks and variables and updates you can make to different parts of the core client and the core protocol. So, there's a lot of new promising technology that's been integrated, because one of the things that we like to do is, hey, if something's out there and there's a specific component, because remember, a blockchain isn't just one simple thing. It's almost like a car, right? And in a car, you've got all those subsystems. You have the brakes, you have the engine, you have the transmission. Well, that's how a blockchain is too. You have the P2P networking, you have the transaction validation, you have the transaction, storage, you have the blocks, you have all these different subsystems. So what we like to do is go in and help improve those subsystems individually, and then that improves the blockchain at large, right? So, over the years, we've literally made thousands of updates and improvements and variations in various places. So we continue to do that. So if we see that there's another project that's made a successful update, or a team of researchers, like for instance, the researchers that did Dandelion for privacy enhancement, they worked on it in an academic setting. They wrote a paper on it. They did a fantastic job. Well, we took it and integrated it into our UTXO protocol. So we're constantly out there looking for that kind of stuff. And so, some of the stuff we've innovated, some of the stuff other people have innovated, but that's the beauty of decentralization and open source.
Exactly. I like the comparison with a car, because, everybody can take the car, wear it, and personalize it. That's kind of the way that, you can use the Digibyte blockchain and make it your own base to build something else. So I think it is really cool.
Yeah. But, the exciting thing is, I really can feel like in 2020, we've had the Federal Reserve come out and say they're working on effectively a federal cryptocurrency. It's been normalized. And for those that may be new that are watching this, if we go back to 2012, 2013, we were all worried that this would be banned. We would be criminals just because we're working in it. They would call it illegal. They would try and kill it. And there were some government attempts to kill it, you know, between 2012, 2015, 2016, 2017, people started waking up, but a lot of people didn't really understand it. 2018, 2019, they've had time to kind of look into it. 2020, here we are. This is the future. I don't know anybody that's disagreeing that, you know, cryptos and blockchain are the future of financial markets. They're the future of currencies. They're the future of, you know, a lot of different applications. So now it's building it. Now it's taking it. And you know, I believe that the future Googles and Amazons of today are already out there. You know, you may know them now, but they're only going to get more prominent, you know, in terms of blockchains over the years.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about something a bit controversial, because I mean, we saw your tweets about Elon Musk new health device, let's call it like that, which, you know, he could probably, or, you know, he's hoping to kind of fix memories, but it's kind of scary at the same time. I mean, it's a big advancement, but also, you know, it can carry lots of risk, and I think they kind of build up lots of hype as well around this Neuralink. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, obviously, first and foremost, it's fascinating to me. You know, it is scary, but also is exciting. I mean, there are a lot of promising use cases, you know, for people that, you know, are paralyzed or are blind, you know, stuff like this. There are legitimate, you know, medical use cases. I think it's very much, you know, it's still quite a few years away. You know, with some of the neuroscientists that I've followed and read that have kind of analyzed exactly what they did, you know, that's still, you know, there's a lot they don't understand. I mean, they were able to decode the motion of the four legs of the pig, but, you know, apparently they've been able to do that for a few years at other research universities. So there was really nothing groundbreaking there, but, you know, in Elon fashion, he's a brilliant marketer. And, you know, it's like he said when he started that presentation out, the primary purpose of this is to go and recruit some of the brightest people out there to come work on this project, right? So, you know, I think it's a ways off. You know, there's a lot of unknowns. You know, I watched the entire presentation. So one of my biggest concerns is they mentioned connecting to the device in your head in Bluetooth. Well, Bluetooth is an unencrypted protocol. So, you know, if you're in a parking lot or you're in a grocery store and somebody walks by and they've got a device and they take over and start zapping your brain, to me, that's kind of scary. But, you know, later on, they did have one of their, I think, developers that said, you know, they're encrypting the entire stack and they're doing it all the way from the hardware level up, which they'd have to. So, you know, there's a lot of unknowns, so I can't really comment on specifics because obviously it's still a prototype and it's a long ways out. You know, I think they're years off before they even try it in humans. I'm definitely not going to sign up to be one of the first people, nor do I actually know if I would ever, unless I could analyze the entire stack from the hardware level up. But I think there are some, you know, I mean, think about it. We have people with pacemakers in their hearts now, you know, and there's risks for that. I mean, medical devices can be hacked. You know, there was talk about, you know, when the former vice president, Dick Cheney, had a pacemaker, there was a fear that, you know, some foreign government may hack and assassinate him, right? Just because he has an electronic device. So there's legitimate risks, but let's be honest, we've had electrical implants, you know, in people for, you know, couple decades now. So it is the way of the future. Like I said, you know, it is kind of exciting. I got to hand it to Elon. I mean, he's a remarkable entrepreneur. He's going after everything. So exactly. It is fascinating to watch. So, you know, I'm not going to like knock it and say it's a horrible idea, but, you know, I still think it's a long ways off.
Yeah, it is fascinating, but something kind of like scary is like, so then you can actually download the memory of somebody. I mean, it could be great with people with Alzheimer or stuff, but at the same time, you know, if you can download the memory of somebody, I mean, those could be really precious, and, you know, all this thing about security just fall off. I don't know. I mean, I agree with you. I think it's kind of fascinating, but
yeah, I think that's a long ways off because, like I said, I mean, right now all they can do is basically figure out which leg's moving just by impulses, and that's a long ways from decoding consciousness. So, you know, I think the actual decoding of consciousness I don't know. I mean, that's one of those things. You have a brilliant breakthrough. Maybe it could happen in 5 years. Maybe it could happen in 2 years. But I would think that's decades off. It's one of those things. It's like, what makes us human? This idea of consciousness, this idea of being. Where does that come from? Right? Is it really ever possible to tap into that and control that and understand that? Are we interdimensional? I don't know. I mean, I don't want to get into religion and all that on here, but there's a lot of unknowns. So for things like restoring vision, I think that's a little bit more understandable, or returning motor function to limbs in a paralyzed individual. I think that's probably going to happen way before decoding and taking and copying our memories.
Yeah, very interesting. Anyway, it's really something interesting to watch, and we can see, development.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Jared, thank you so much for this amazing chat, and I hope to have you back on the show very soon.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, this is everything from the Financial Fox today. I hope that you enjoyed the interview, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't done it yet, and follow us on social media for news and updates. I will see you next time.